Hey there, and welcome to Get Career Curious, the podcast that gives you the inside scoop on careers, what it takes to get there, and what the job is really like. This week, we're talking with Brittany Hizer, a powerhouse innovator who turned a passion for sports and creativity into a trailblazing career, spanning fitness tech, fishing boats, and now game-changing baby products. Brittany went from dreaming of teaching to leading product launches at Life Fitness, running an $80 million boat company, and co-founding Pluie, the world's first self-sanitizing diaper changing table, as seen on Shark Tank. So if you've ever wondered how to pivot, build real-world skills, or launch a product that actually solves problems, Brittany's journey is packed with inspiration and practical tips. Welcome, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So nice to be here with you.
So, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you into your current role with Pluie? Did you know you wanted to go into business or marketing, or how did your career unfold?
Yes, well, I actually started thinking I was going to be an elementary school teacher. So that was my early path in college. And then after I had some classroom experience, I knew that teaching probably likely wasn't my career path. So I ended up pursuing marketing and communications. And frankly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated from college. I was on the track and field team. I had a very intensive senior year in terms of curriculum. And I just kept telling my parents, I'll figure out what I want to be when I graduate. And it was my first interview after I graduated with a company called Life Fitness as a product manager. And I didn't know what product management was at the time, but I had that love of sports and athletics. And I thought, gosh, this seems like a great fit. So I will pursue this opportunity. And long story short, I found myself a month after graduating in Chicago as an assistant product manager at Life Fitness.
That sounds like a great first job out of college.
Yes, it was. I really thought I landed my dream job. And it was at the time. And as I progressed throughout my career at Life Fitness, I went from product management, where essentially I was working on the next treadmill that you would see in a Planet Fitness or a Lifetime Fitness. I was working on exercise bikes and cross trainers. And I would see some of my ideas coming to life and, people using those products all over the world. And so I knew right away that I loved working with physical products, and I could see the impact. I could see people actually using the products that I was developing and designing. What I always recommend to people is, there's a lot of opportunities even within your same company. So I would not only do product development, but then at one point I was on the sales team. Another point, I joined the marketing team. So I had all these various wonderful experiences within the same company. And I think a lot of times people feel that once they start down the marketing career path, they can only stay in marketing. But what's really valuable to me was having that versatile career experience. And I ended up staying with Life Fitness for almost 15 years. My last position there, I was managing a small business down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that was a great experience in terms of general business management. But then I pivoted from fitness equipment to fishing boats and was the president of Crestliner Fishing, an $80 million business based out of Minnesota. So I was commuting to and from Chicago to Minnesota, and this was before the pandemic, where remote working was really accepted. And it took a toll on me, honestly, and I was a new mom at the time. I did decide to resign from that career opportunity, and that's how I landed with Pluie as the co-founder of Pluie.
That's a really fun story to hear, that you were able to marry your athletic background and running with a company that obviously values running in product development. So when you were back in that role, what do you actually do? You weren't an engineer, right? So what was your role in product
that's
development?
such a good question, because I didn't really know what when I first pursued even interviewing for the role. And as a product manager, it's often also called brand manager. You're really taking the
Mhm.
research, the consumer insights. You're looking at competition. You're looking at products that already exist in the market, and essentially you're giving to the cross-functional team all the specifications. You're saying, okay, here is the next cell that we're going to design based on all of my market research, consumer insights, competitive analysis, talking to the customers who are buying the fitness equipment. So you really have like the marketing hat on, but it's really about identifying with what is going to sell well and what is going to be hopefully loved by the end users. So you don't necessarily need to have the engineering backgrounds, but you certainly need to be able to work with different personalities, from engineers to industrial designers to procurement managers, etc. So for my personality, what I really leaned heavily on was just the ability to, one, have empathy, two, listen, and three, collaborate with different personalities.
And then how would you say that differed from your next role of marketing the product?
Yeah, so I went from
The
product
treadmill.
development to marketing, and on the marketing side, I was responsible for looking at the way fitness facilities are essentially laid out in terms of, strength equipment over here, cardio equipment over here. And we were trying to bring a new solution to health clubs to say, hey, maybe if you arrange your equipment differently, you'll be able to track the novice users or the more serious weightlifters. And it was really bringing a new solution to health and wellness customers. And on the marketing side, it was less about the product. It was more about kind of the reframe and how to package what already exists and bringing a new solution in a creative way.
So would you consider that to be more of a creative role? If people were looking into interviewing for different positions or trying out different roles, what makes it like a good
Yeah, I would
marketer?
say it was a creative role, but I would say there's so many now customer journey roles within companies, or,
Mhm.
customer journey mapping or director of experience. Those tend to fall into the marketing arm of a business. So, and those are
Mhm.
really fun roles. And I think that's something as people are looking at a career path, certainly, on the experience side, that would be an exciting role.
What was your degree, and then how were you able to college degree, parlay that into your first role? And then I believe you went and got your MBA. At what point did you feel
Yeah.
that was
Well, I'd
necessary?
say I went to a small liberal arts university, and that was such a great experience
Mhm.
because not only was I focused on my major, which ended up being communications,
Mhm.
but it puts you in all sorts of situations where you have to present in front of the class, you have to collaborate in groups, and it was so much about, well, individualized work, but also group
Mhm.
work. And I would say that was so critical because in the real world, you're working with, yeah,
Everything's
everything's
group.
group, and you're working with so many different personalities. So I really valued that experience. And then your writing skills, my writing skills in college, I mean, that is so critical. The way you communicate, the way you put your
Mhm.
thoughts on paper. Obviously, now with AI, you can certainly
Mm.
generate some beautiful emails and proposals using ChatGDP now, but at that time, there was just
Yeah.
such a focus on your thoughts translating to paper and how eloquently you can do so. So, I will say
Mhm.
communications was my major in college, and just doing a lot of presentations, doing a lot of group work really prepared me well for then that post college career. I really recommend to any high school students, college students that I come across, do intern. I did a lot of internships when I was
Yeah.
young, whether that was at a sports specific training facility Or I even worked for my grandma, who was a really successful real estate agent. But it was just those experiences were invaluable. And there's a lot of paid internships these
Yeah.
days because legally you have to, in certain states, you have to pay for interns. But even if you can do a couple hours, whether it's like a social media intern or a sales intern, it's very valuable. And of course, it's a resume builder. You also asked about
Yeah.
an MBA. So I'd always wanted to go back to school. I always had that itch to get my MBA. But as I was going into different roles that I described at the beginning of the podcast, where I would go from product development to marketing to sales to general business management, I was always like, ooh, I don't want to leave my career now to go back and do a 2-year full-time MBA program. I was like, oh, I don't want to give up my paycheck. I don't want to risk not having
Yeah.
that income for 2 years. But I knew in my gut that I really wanted to get back in the classroom. So eventually, I think I was about 34, 35. I did apply to go back to grad school. And I ended up at the age where I could actually go through an executive MBA program. So I went through
Okay.
Kellogg, which is Northwestern University. I went through the executive MBA program, and it was still a 2-year commitment, but it was focused on the weekends. So I could actually have my full-time career,
Yeah.
have that income, 401k, health benefits while
Yeah.
still going back to school. So I know the listeners err on the young side, but I will say,
Yeah.
education is something that's a lifelong pursuit. And especially with podcasts and ebooks and everything at your fingertips, you can constantly be learning these days.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's an interesting way to get your master's is to stay working. I actually
I
did that
did.
as well. I was working at Accenture in consulting and, really liked my job and honestly needed the income. And so there wasn't really an option to totally go full time. So I did a mix. I did 1 year part time and then 1 year like in person
Oh,
full
that's
time.
amazing. And you still
So
get that.
yeah, I've seen both sides of
Yeah.
it
And you
then.
still
Yeah.
get that network because a lot of,
Yeah.
the NBA programs, it's about the people you meet, the teachers you interact with, the professionals that you meet during panels and speaking engagements. So it's still an opportunity to get that network. It's just you can also get your
Yeah.
income.
If listeners really are wanting to do a MBA, one thing that's a little different is actually they do want you to have working experience. You're not generally accepted into a top MBA program without having several years of work experience.
Yeah, even, a decade or 2 ago, there was that path of, like, you graduate from undergrad and then you go straight into an MBA program. And what I really share with young audiences is I say, get that career experience because then you have that lens when you are then going through the MBA program. You have so much more to offer the classroom, offer your classmates because you already have like several years of career experience in real world applications and scenarios that you can then apply in the classroom.
Agree. And can you talk about now what you're doing with Pluie and your role as COO? What does that
Yes.
involve?
Well, I will share, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I would have these crazy ideas. I actually still have like a notebook where like I would write down my ideas. I come from a very entrepreneurship family. So my grandpa was an entrepreneur, my uncle, both my grandmas, started their own businesses. So I had that bug in me,
Yeah.
but I never felt like I had the home run idea. And then when I took a career pause after I left corporate, I was focusing on my son. I took a little career sabbatical, and I always
Yeah.
recommend if you have the opportunity to take a brief pause. I mean, mine was only about 4 months. It is a beautiful experience if you can afford to do so, and it really gives you a lot of clarity. I was thinking about what is my next move. And I was introduced to this woman who had a great idea for a self-sanitizing diaper changing table for public restrooms. So she was a relatively new mom herself. And I met her through a friend of mine. She said, Brittany, you have to meet this woman. She has this great idea. Diaper changing tables have not evolved essentially since they were introduced in the early 80s. So we met for coffee, and it was going to be a 1 hour coffee. We found ourselves sitting there talking about, our vision, our dreams, our lives for 5 hours. And I
Wow.
said, I'm in, let's do this. At that point, she didn't have a prototype, but she did go so far to apply for a patent for the idea for a self-sanitizing diaper changing table. So the patent had been submitted, so was under review. We were so excited because here we are, two moms who were changing dirty diapers in public restrooms, seeing, broken diaper changing tables, dirty diaper changing tables. Sometimes we would go into women's restrooms and there'd be no diaper changing table at all, which still to this day baffles us when they're not in public restrooms at all. I said, well, it's not my idea, but I will help bring this idea to life as the co-founder and COO, which I want to just call that out. Sometimes to be an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily need to have the idea. You just need to know a person with the idea, and you can help them bring it to life. And that is just as critical of a role as the person that has the idea.
Absolutely. And you have that experience of doing
Yes.
product development and customer research and product placement. So you have a lot of that to bring to the table, which is a nice partnership.
Yes, it was, and she recognized
So-
that too. A lot of times a founder doesn't want to seek someone with a different skill set. They just want to kind of be a lone founder. So I credited her early on to find somebody who had a much different skill set, and that product development experience from fitness equipment to fishing boats really was invaluable as we started prototyping, as we started piloting, getting our tables out into public restrooms, and then scaling the business. And here we are, 5 years later. We were on Shark Tank. We were on Jeopardy. That was really exciting.
You were?
We were an answer on Jeopardy. And we've also introduced another product, a portable diaper changing mat. So we're, building this business and building this brand that will hopefully become a household name one day.
Yeah. Well, we certainly need some changes in that market specifically. I've never met anyone who went on Shark Tank. How was that overall experience? It seems so pressure filled. How did that go?
Yeah.
On
Well, first of
TV?
all, the application process is extremely lengthy and strenuous. So
Okay.
both of us submitted about 30-page applications, and then we had to send an application as the business. You go through a very extreme vetting process, and then eventually, hopefully, you get a phone call saying you've been selected to be assigned to a production team who will start working with you on set design, your first initial pitch. But the wild thing is about Shark Tank is the only thing that is really scripted is those first 90 seconds that you often see. Like, hi, I'm Brittany. I'm the founder of Pluie. And then everything else is just, Q&A. The sharks don't know anything about your business. They don't know anything about you. So that is not scripted. And when we eventually got the green light to fly out to LA to film, we were just paralyzed with nerves because you're there in LA.
Yeah.
We thought we were filming on a Saturday. There was a COVID exposure. So we ended up not filming till a Tuesday. And we just were so nervous that there else we could do but rehearse, think of all the Q&A. And then obviously America and, the viewers only see about 7 to 8 minutes. But as we were pitching, obviously you don't see a clock, but it was about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And you have no idea what they're going to end up showing on TV. And it is just such a stressful experience. But the most amazing experience as well. And it's still surreal talking about it, even though we filmed in the summer of 2022. Our episode aired in March of 2023. You actually end up, after you pitch, you end up going to see a therapist because it can be a really stressful experience and very, out of body experience as well. And then, your hope is that you'll generate sales. And we actually got Starbucks out of our episode. A couple executives from Starbucks saw our episode. A couple months later, saw us at a trade show and said, we will essentially trial your Pluie diaper changing tables in a couple select locations. So that was really exciting for us. And that came out of Shark.
Yeah, that's huge. It's a lot of publicity but it's also a lot of stress. And I'm sure you guys had to prepare, extensively. So
it is.
Yeah, but just getting that exposure.
Yeah, getting that exposure. I mean, 4 million viewers. For us at the time, we were only a commercial business. So it's not like we saw that big bump in sales the night that we aired. Whereas maybe we actually had some really early prototypes of our diaper change in our diaper bags, thinking if it's appropriate, we'll go ahead and pull this out and talk about our consumer products. But it wasn't appropriate to share in the moment. As a consumer business, you would see that big bump in sales and revenue. And a lot of our friends who have since aired on Shark Tank, have that exciting night of their biggest sales night ever. And if anybody is watching this and has an idea or has a business and they want to apply to Shark Tank, reach out to me. I have a lot of insights and learnings that I can share as you go through the process.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a business in itself. So getting back to you being an entrepreneur, I think a lot of people perceive it as it being like super glamorous and fun, and it can be. But can you share what are your favorite things about being an entrepreneur? And then what are some of the more challenging aspects?
I actually wrote a blog about this a couple months ago called Startup Life Surprises. So obviously the benefit of entrepreneurship, you control your own destiny. We often, especially as moms, talk about the flexible schedule. I can go pick up my son from school at 3:00, have a couple hours with him, then log back on. I'm not on Zoom calls 8 hours a day like I potentially would be in a corporate role. So the beauty of entrepreneurship is obviously you control your own destiny, your flexible schedule that you can control. I would say too, it's obviously so rewarding. It's like we have built this from scratch. We're seeing our diaper changing tables in CVS all over the nation. I fly into Indianapolis Airport, I see my diaper changing tables. There's an incredible feeling when you see your business out there in the world being used by parents, babies, etc. The downside is what I didn't realize as an entrepreneur is we often say this, we don't work around the clock, but we think around the clock. And it is so hard to shut down. I sometimes find myself waking up at 3 a.m. and reaching for my notebook to jot down an idea. So not really having the option to turn it off. We often laugh too about we call them shower thoughts. I'll be taking a shower and then I'll have a new idea that I have to share with my business partner. And obviously there's a different level of stress. So I often share, I was stressed in my corporate role, but when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a business owner, there's a different level of stress. It's every day your livelihood is on the line. Am I going to get my paycheck in 2 weeks? Am I going to be able to retire with this business if we can get an exit? When you don't have the benefit of the 401k and the health benefits, but you're building something that is so meaningful.
Yeah. And I think you having had a pretty rich corporate experience can bring that into entrepreneurship and really be able to see there's good and bad in both situations. And for a younger audience, I think sometimes it's hard to jump right into entrepreneurship without some level of experience working for someone or working in a business, just to learn some skills without it actually costing you your
Yes.
benefits. That's a big thing about being
And that's
employed.
what I meet a lot
Yeah.
of young people that want to be an entrepreneur or have a great idea, and I often advise them. I say, go ahead and get some, more formal career experience or get a job here and there. Or if you want to like pursue a new AI venture, like maybe get a job with somebody who's already has a couple years in AI. Get that formality, get that experience, and then go ahead and pursue what you want maybe as a side hustle until you can turn it into, a full-time hustle. There is a lot of benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a great way
yeah,
to do
it
it.
was
Yeah, I would agree. And then looking back over your career, what would you say were some of the coolest projects or experiences that you've
Mhm.
had? Because you've had a wide
Yeah.
variety.
I would say it might be hard to believe from some viewers, but when Apple first introduced the iPhone, the iPod, found a way to integrate with, like, treadmills, bikes, and cross trainers. So when we were the first ones to do Apple compatibility, that was a big moment. That was a really exciting project. And then obviously, everybody now has touchscreen tablets and laptops. But when touchscreens were kind of first hitting the market, we
Yeah.
introduced treadmills with large touchscreens. And that was a pretty incredible moment. I mean, we were really redesigning the way exercisers interact with fitness equipment, and could even have things like, a TV right at your fingertips. So you're doing a 30-minute jog on a treadmill at a Lifetime Fitness. What better way to occupy and get you through that run.
Yeah.
And then on the fishing boat side, what was so exciting is introducing brand new what's called a hull. It's essentially like the guts of a fishing boat. That was really exciting. But then, I mean, the fact that we're introducing a diaper changing table that uses UVC light to self-sanitize, and this was an idea before the pandemic. I mean, we are the first and only diaper changing table that kills bacteria, germs, etc., protecting babies in the world. There's not a lot of companies can say, like, we're first with this product in the world, and we can say that. And it's 2 moms that have really reimagined the diaper changing experience for families in public. And I always say, it starts with a problem. Like, we had the problem ourselves,
Right.
and we had the passion
Mhm.
to solve the problem because obviously we were moms and experiencing a lot of diaper changes in public. So make sure, 1, you know the problem intimately that you're solving, and 2, that you're extremely
Yeah.
passionate about solving that problem. Because there are gonna be days that you wake up and you are like, "I cannot do this any longer." But obviously, if you have that passion and you have that persistence, you'll get through even the hard days as an entrepreneur. Or the same thing goes if you're pursuing like a corporate career. I pursued
Mhm.
passion businesses, fitness, and then fishing. Those are passion businesses, and that makes like going to work so much more fun. And the people that you surround yourself with, they're like-minded.
Yeah. Working with like-minded, passionate people, it does make every day a
Mhm,
little bit more
mhm.
fun. So, in closing, what is your best career insight to share with someone who's maybe in high school or college and just kind of navigating their way? In general, what career advice would you offer?
Yeah, I would say, 1, pursue your passions. You'll wake up excited to work, and that is so critical, and you'll be around like-minded people. 2,
Mhm.
even when you're in high school, be kind. Meet as many people as you can because you never know where they're gonna be, 5, 10 years
Yeah.
from now. We have investors, we
Yeah.
have team members who are people that I went to high school with and college with. And then 3, like, if you get a no, it's usually a not right now. And I think that applies to so many scenarios in your life, whether it's going on a date or whether it's applying for an internship or a job. But we often say it's about patience, persistence, and how do we turn those no's into either a no, not right now, or eventually a yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's tremendous advice. Thank you. I so appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom and experience. And yeah, I so wish Pluie the
Well,
best
thank
of
you,
luck
Marita.
because as a
Yeah,
mom
and
of
you get
four,
it.
I would love to have had a diaper changing station that was clean.
Right, clean, comfortable, and
So,
convenient. Well, thank you for
yeah,
having me on as a guest.
yes.
My honor, and hopefully you'll have some listeners who get a lot of value out of this.
Brittany Hizer. If you're a high school or college student dreaming about your future, Brittany just dropped some serious wisdom you can use right now. First, try new things, expected opportunities. Second, build real world skills. Internships, group projects, and in getting involved outside the classroom help Brittany land her first job and be prepared because you never know where those relationships will take you. Thank you again for joining us today. Our goal is to help listeners discover meaningful careers that bring them joy and purpose. If you have a friend who might benefit from today's discussion with Brittany, please share this episode with them. If you're ready for more career stories and honest advice, hit subscribe and join our community. Thank you again for joining me, Marita McCahill, for this episode of Get Career Curious. I'll see you next time.